Chapter 4. I've learned something recently. Goodbyes are somehow exhausting, and I do not like them. When I left Los Angeles, there was this bittersweetness about it, but I wasn't exactly sad. I can't explain why, other than the fact that I think somewhere deep inside me there's this little girl that was protecting me from getting attached to anything. I don't know when that changed, but I think it has something to do with the lingering attraction that Domani DeLuca brought into my life. No matter which continent I was on. Or maybe it was when I really clicked with Sophia for the first time in a long time, or at all really. Even my best friend in high school didn't know some of the things I've admitted to Sophia over time. Meeting these people here in France, I didn't hold such reservations. I genuinely liked its people and I'll miss them all. I spent a full year here in Paris. I hadn't expected to, but it was a beautiful surprise, if not also a bittersweet one. After dinner last night with my boss and interns, I had some more teary goodbyes, until Cynthia pulled me aside for a private chat. We ended up sitting at the bar in that restaurant until later than I would have expected. She bought me a drink and we spoke about many things. She also just wanted to say thank you for being a great intern. And to give me some words of advice. As my mentor, of course I'll listen to her. This industry is cutthroat, even if they're smiling at you while holding the scissors, and I bet with their designer shoes too. You have good instincts. Use them. Trust Mia in here, she told me, and placed her hand over my heart. It was the most sentimental she's ever been. The woman has always been mostly elusive and at times even strange. She isn't friendly, yet I consider her my friend. She keeps a tight ship in her office and scolds them often, yet they admire her. She drinks champagne in designer gowns, and whisks you off so you can get away from perverts and boring men. It's in her innate ability to read into the minute details, and pull from the depths of your mind something you didn't even know you were thinking of. I know the fabulous, handsome man who went to London and Paris for you. He's a temptation all women would fall into. Men like him are wonderful lies, darling. Remember this. Had you left 6 months ago, your life would not have been the same, she told me, though I never once told her about the ultimatum Dom had given me. How'd you know? I practically whispered. Because as I said, men like him are a wonderful lie and a sneaky trap. Why do you think I married someone like DuPont? He's shorter than me by at least 5 inches, and undeserving of me, but that's exactly why I like him. He knows he's unworthy and he kisses my hand like I'm royalty to him. He never overshadowed my own career or stopped me from continuing it. He's ugly, but he's a good husband, she deadpanned. My jaw dropped at her brutal honesty, but I expect nothing less from Cynthia DuPont. I knew when I saw a man of that caliber follow you to London that he'd be your beautiful lie. That's how I know, darling. She patted my hand. My boss and I leaned onto the bar and talked this way for a good 2 hours. She's smart and blunt. She gives good advice and she dazzles you with her perfect observations you wouldn't think she'd catch on to. That's why I always called this woman a mythical creature. She has an air about her that I found in common with Carl. Maybe that's part of why we got on so well. The same way I met Mrs. Cynthia DuPont, was the same way that I left her. Swooping into her arms, with a double cheek kiss and a smirk. She told me once that she felt she'd see me again soon. She'd been correct. Again, her parting words to me were, "This isn't over. Oh, it's hardly begun. See you there." She didn't specify where there was, but I didn't ask either. Cynthia knows and I'll find out once I arrive. Whenever that may be. That was all last night, and somewhat intense where emotions and gratitude were involved. Tonight I have dinner with Simon, who's always been a calming presence in my life. He's laid back with his usual t-shirts and messy hair. We started as strangers waiting for a client to get photographed by him. We ended up friends once we started working together more frequently than we thought. Hanging around the set with him was never boring, even when we just lounged around waiting on this thing or that thing. Divas and whatnot. Tonight he wanted to dress up and give me a proper goodbye. I found it sweet and obliged him. I hadn't been expecting it and had to pull out a last-minute dress from my luggage. It wouldn't be my first choice, but it was elegant enough to meet Simon's requirements. I loved seeing him in a handsome suit. He almost blushed when I praised him. You know, if I wasn't gay you'd be my ideal woman, he told me during our meal. I laughed. I didn't know you were gay. You never mentioned it, I said, but then I thought better of it. Well, I didn't announce I was straight either, so I guess it's silly to think you'd announce something like that, I laughed at myself. He smiled and ran a hand down his stubbled chin. When I met him he was clean-shaven, but I think he wears it well. Simon is the kind of guy that's so laid back you wouldn't know much about him unless he told you himself. He never flirted with me, but he was always very friendly in the way that could have teetered that line. Want to hear something fun? I asked him. His eyebrows rose, which is his version of saying, what? When we were in New York last year for Fashion Week, the man I was somewhat in a fling with was very jealous of you. I leaned forward and whispered to him just to be silly. Really? I had no idea you were even seeing someone. What did he say? He asked me. I posted pictures. You saw, I tagged you on my page, so I guess he saw that and just felt like you were a threat. You should be honored, because the man doesn't feel threatened by much. I smiled, then frowned. I would never tell Simon that Dom was actually cruising the streets of New York with a gun in his lap, and murder gloves on. I edited that part out of this little story. I'm flattered. Thank you, he teased me. He asked about him, but when he saw my expression he decided to quickly change subjects, which I greatly appreciated. We kept things lighthearted after that. He asked me some questions similar to what people were asking me throughout all these dinners. What I enjoyed most and things like that. Simon, when you come to America for any kind of work you better call me. I don't like goodbyes, I told him. And you whenever you come to France. Which I feel will happen often if you stay with Lagerfeld. I know Simon admires his photography and keeps track of his work. I would kill to work alongside him, he sighed at the idea. We finished our meal and idled in conversation. I didn't have drinks with Julian for another 30 minutes or so. Well, if I do continue to work for him then I'll mention you to him. Maybe we can collaborate on a future project, I shrugged. His eyes went wide and he ran a hand down his scruff. Before adjusting the tie I could tell he isn't used to. Wow, I would have never asked you to do something like that, but it means a lot that you would, he told me honestly. I've already met some people who've tried asking me to introduce them to Carl and all that stuff. Fake people who want to be my friend, only now after I've become somewhat popular. Has Lagerfeld even told you what projects you'll be working on in New York? He's going to, isn't he? Simon asked me. He is, though I have no idea what we'll be doing. He's a bit strange, he does as he pleases, I chuckled. I've heard some funny things about him in the industry already. I can only imagine, Simon couldn't help but laugh. Because he likes the man as much as I do, I told him a few stories about his quirkiness. He couldn't get enough of them. I'm serious though, Simon. If I'm ever in a position to make a request from someone as important as Lagerfeld, I will mention you. You've always been a great friend even before he came into the picture. I won't forget it, I assured him. It's not like I'd be doing him such a huge favor. He's shown me his work and he's excellent. Carl likes having a posse around. He has his handsome bodyguard that's kind of famous for being the hot guard Lagerfeld brings around. He also has a male model he favors, and the model's son who's his godson that he brings out at the end of shows. He calls them family, but the news calls them his posse. People ask if I'm now in this exclusive posse. I don't know that I am, but I also don't know that I'm not. Only time will tell. Again I faced another sad goodbye when I hugged Simon close and thanked him for being such a calming influence here. He's another person who's so sure he'll see me again. It's nice to hold that hope instead of thinking I'll just cut them off like I have to others in the past. After all that, I walked down the block and was picked up by Julian, who was my last stop on the goodbye train. I asked him to take me home so I could change. I had a fabulous outfit picked out, and wasn't about to miss the opportunity to use it. He had called this my fashionable au revoir, so I'm holding him to it. He was more than happy to. He also stayed true to his word when he told me he'd take me to his fabulous secret spot for drinks. All with a clear view of the Eiffel Tower, lit its brightest of the night. This wasn't a goodbye, and took the pressure off of all this. I told him how many mixed emotions I'd been feeling. This drink was actually the perfect way to wrap things up after 2 days of goodbyes. Julian's so handsome, and he turns on the charm so easily. His grin is even handsome, and he used it to make me smile back. Can I ask you something? He interrupted our quiet gazing at the tower across the water. Yes? He had me curious. I felt he introduced it so formally for it to just be a random passing question. Have you thought about what you're going to do once you get back to New York? Where Dom is involved, I mean, he clarified. Even the name spoils my gut. Why do you ask? I hesitated on answering. Just because you've told me enough about him to know it isn't an easy thing to just walk back into the life of the man who walked out on yours, he pointed out a harsh reality. Dom is a complicated person, and one we should both keep away from, I warned him. I know Dom doesn't care about me anymore, but a small part of me did worry when I heard Julian would be around. If someone saw us together, they might notice our closeness isn't only professional. Why do you say it like that? He asked about my warning. I didn't know how to even go about telling him the real reason to stay away. He's just got a nasty temper and a large ego. I wouldn't want any confrontations. I think we've all moved past that time in our lives. As you said, he walked out. It doesn't get more clear than that. I'm planning on staying away from him. Far away if I can help it. Julian's eyes looked me over from head to toe, and he smiled in his handsome way. You look good tonight. Have I told you that yet? He asked me in that smooth voice he has. It isn't gruff, his hands aren't rough, and he has no tattoos. He's a well-put-together man with a fantastic build, and slate of abs, but he's different. I can't keep comparing the two, but I do. Julian is safe. He's a public relations guy who's always cleaning things up, and making everything look good to the media. Dom makes a mess of anyone who gets too close. There's nothing public or friendly about him. He keeps out of the spotlight for that very reason. He doesn't want to exist on paper. He runs an empire right under our noses and you'd never know it. Has Carl told you about the process it takes to get to the plane? He asked me. I tipped my head in confusion. I've taken an airplane before, I chuckled at him. He laughed back at me, though I didn't understand at first. Mia, you aren't flying commercially. Mr. Lagerfeld takes a private jet, and you're going to be on it, he shocked me by saying. Huh? I thought I was flying Air France, since when? I had my jaw on the floor. That was before Lagerfeld decided to join you. Has he mentioned anything about that either? I won't be surprised if he didn't, but I usually get some updates for the purpose of my job. I know bits and pieces, he told me. I'm sorry, I'm still hung up on the private jet part. I could have flown commercial. Who the hell am I to be on some private jet? And I was deadly serious. You're Mia Fiore, beautiful and talented muse of Karl Lagerfeld, legend in fashion history, and the current industry. Get used to this, sweetheart, because I don't think your life is gonna continue on so quietly. You're with us now, he rubbed my shoulder and brought me into his side. With us now, what the hell did that mean? Chapter 5. Today I learned how one goes about entering a private jet. You don't walk into the airport with the commoners. You have something called an FBO that handles all the private security checks. You wait in no lines. You enter the plane very quickly. All this was way out of my element, so I just followed along with the gentleman who was meant to pick me up and bring me to this airport in the first place. I didn't arrive with Carl or anything, so I just trusted this man would get me where I needed to be. And he did. I was still a bit awestruck when Julian, Carl, and a few people from Carl's team all entered the plane with me. Julian laughed at my face, and I can only imagine how my expression must read now. A private jet is smaller and much more lavish. Their seating looks more like sofas than actual uncomfortable airplane chairs. All fine leather, of course, and most turn into beds for proper sleep. There are tables in between the seats that face one another. Julian already sat down at one, and pulled out his laptop to do some work. Private staff come and offer you a variety of things you didn't think you could get on an airplane. Whatever comes to mind when you think of a very famous fashion designer's jet is probably exactly what it looks like. I was overwhelmed by it all, and took a seat in the back corner where there wasn't so much movement. We have 6+ hours in this plane, so I just wanted to get settled in. Maybe catch some sleep, so the time difference doesn't kick my ass when I arrive there. It'll be 8 p.m. New York time, but 2 a.m. Paris time, which my body is still accustomed to. Because my name plays on the Italian equivalent to my flower, Carl's taken a liking to either calling me Fiore Mia or my flower. Technically Il mio fiore would be the proper way to say that, but it still works with my name. Because Carl speaks Italian, German, French, and English, he knows the translation. It's become a kind of pet name for him. The thing about Carl is that he lets misinformation be told about him, and doesn't correct it because he likes being elusive. He's an old man, but just how old is he? A few things to know about the man is that he was born in Germany, He isn't married and has no children, and that most of whatever you think you know about him probably isn't the whole truth. The direct quote he said was, "The most important thing you should know about me is that everything you're told by others is not necessarily the truth." By no surprise, the old man was in a high-collar shirt, designer suit, with his gloves and glasses, and his signature ponytail. His mouth sags ever so slightly with age, but he's kept himself well maintained for being probably 80 years old. When he came to the back of the airplane, my eyes shifted up from where they'd been fixed on the small window for takeoff. We were in the air now, and things had settled down slightly. Karl Lagerfeld has a German accent, but with the slightest hint of the French influence he has due to how often he actually speaks it. His English is spoken quickly at times and can be hard to understand if you aren't paying attention. The man likes visions and ideas, but hates reality and business. He's a designer. He leaves the rest to other markets. He doesn't touch business the way you'd think. It's all about creation for him. I like that. When Karl sat beside me on the plane, I knew just about anything could come out of his mouth right now. He's just that kind of a person. He can say something funny, controversial, or inspiring. Or he can ask me to pass him the salt, who knows? He might sit in front of you and draw a quick caricature that he's well known for. Another thing to know about Karl is his obsession with his cat. I'm not kidding, the net worth of that cat is more than you could imagine. Her name is Choupette and she's better pampered than I've ever been. She's very cute, and Karl is very fond of her. He joked once that if he were to get married, it'd be to the cat. It's odd that you hear nothing about Karl Lagerfeld's personal love life. There's one person whom they coined Karl's lover so long ago, but Karl denies that being a truth in the romantic sense. I bring this up because Karl came and sat across from me on one of his plush seats, tapping his gloved hand on the table that separated us. "What have you left behind? What are you greeting again?" He asked me with no context. I must have looked confused because he chuckled lightly. "Your face, my flower, it speaks even when you are quiet," he told me. I don't know why I decided to do it, but I found myself talking about Dom with the man. He listened and nodded, not interrupting, which he can often do. Fashion is your first lover. This makes sense to me. Other lovers may come, but fashion, this is your soulmate, he told me. Is that how you feel about it for yourself? I found myself asking him. You hear so many things about me. Who is Karl dating? Why does he not marry? I've never been overly concerned with these things. I had a lover once, but not how people think a lover should be. I never touched the boy romantically, though I loved him as a person. He inspired me with his beauty. I was younger, this was the very early 70s. The story, have you heard it? It's like the movies, he told me. I was fascinated, so I leaned forward and asked that he'd continue. Karl fixed the lapels of his coat and posed himself to start speaking. Jacques de Boscher, he was 21 and just resigned from Air France. We went to live together, which is why the people they feel they must label this as something, so they can understand it. They called him my lover. It was platonic, but people don't care too much for the details if they're not parallel to the headline. The boy had vast literary culture and impertinence. I called this a movie because of the great drama that unfolded here. His accented voice can become animated in a way that makes you open your ears wider just to take it all in. You know Yves Saint Laurent? Of course you do, you love the designer. At this time he was together with Pierre Berg, who co-founded this YSL brand. Anyway, Yves Saint Laurent started an affair with Jacques. I knew this, but because we had no romantic relationship it did not bother me. The two had such an unbalanced relationship. Very bad. Pierre Berg threatened Jacques to end this affair with his partner, Karl explained with a distant look like he was recalling the memories all at once. Jacques was a free spirit as I am, but a little bit darker, you see. I fell into the fantasy of design and he fell into the arms of trouble. Risky sexual practices, drugs, alcohol, and BDSM, you know this? Karl asked. I was wide-eyed, but continued to nod yes to everything. It is sad to say that the boy contracted HIV after all this trouble he found himself in. I stayed by the man's hospital bedside as we were close to one another. Not lovers the way people define them, but there was love. You understand? This is where the name Yako comes from in the villa I named after my friend, and the fragrance too. For Yako. He told me a few more details about the story, and I was perplexed at the intimate details he was willing to give me. Yves Saint Laurent is another fashion designer whose name is major in the fashion industry. The two knew one another. It was Yves who brought Lagerfeld this great fashion rivalry that changed history forever. But they were friends too. Did you know we had this in common? I too entered a contest to win an opportunity with a fashion house. I entered a coat design competition and won, and Yves entered the dress category and won. This is how we met. Through Balmain, he explained. Really? I do know a lot about your career, but I don't think I knew that detail of it. Is that why you held a competition like that? To give someone a chance like you were given? I asked him. It is pretentious just to label couture or other design as for this person and not for that person. It is for anyone who cares for it. The same goes with a vision. We do not want the same people doing the same things when there are hidden gems all over the place. I saw your drawings and your spirit through your work. I knew this will be important one day. If not me, someone would have seen it, so I took it first. He smirked at me. The man is known for bringing an almost dead brand, Coco Chanel, and turning it back into this major success, revamping it with his ready-to-wear fashion line. He rebuilt the brand, creating the double CC monogram that everyone knows as Chanel's symbols now. There's so much to say about him that I couldn't ever fit it all into one sitting. For the good majority of this 6-hour flight I spoke with the talented genius that is Karl Lagerfeld, and we spoke on lovers, fashion competitions, designs, where we both get our inspirations from. He told me sometimes it comes to him like a dream even while he's awake, and I knew what he meant. It made him very happy. He says people don't understand free-spirited vision. We talked about fashion being a lover, because I liked his words on that earlier. He mentioned that Dom might have been a lover, but that I already had one before and even after him. If I had to guess, I'd call Lagerfeld asexual because he doesn't seem very physically interested in people, in a sexual way. Maybe I shouldn't put a label to it. He has plenty of muses, he's called me one of them, but it isn't in a raunchy way. He treats it as art. How long do you think we'll work together? I found the courage to ask him as the New York skyline was coming closer into view. Until the inspiration is gone. He told me, tapping the table between us again, showing those leather fingerless gloves. He stood up and told the flight attendant to bring him his Diet Coke. He loves those. He doesn't drink or smoke at all. That's his vice if he ever had one. After such a deep conversation with the man you consider your idol, you can be overwhelmed, but in a good way. I won't lie and say he still doesn't make me very nervous, because he does. Heart racing nervous. Only because I aspire to be like him one day. I want to be someone he likes, and someone who impresses him. So, I usually get fidgety and nervous for a while, but when we fall into a groove of conversation, or when we're working together on a project, it eventually fades out into something else. With New York below us, I wasn't feeling the nervousness of sitting in front of a man you admire. I was feeling the adrenaline of knowing you're about to enter the city of a man whose very presence threatens your once stable existence. Meeting Karl Lagerfeld was life-altering. Meeting Domani de Luca was life-shattering.